All right, well, welcome back to the Merck Method, where we explore mental wellness, growth, and the human experience. So, today we're going to jump a little bit off of the other episode that I just wrote about burning it at both ends, and that's boundaries. And that's something that we all kind of struggle with. I know that I struggle with that. Where's the line drawn, right? I mean, let's be honest. How many times have you said yes to something when you were like screaming no on the inside? Maybe you didn't want to say that because you didn't want to upset somebody. You didn't want to seem selfish, or lazy. But because you did that, what was the cost, right? So, kind of, we're going to talk about that a little bit about the power of boundaries, what they are, why they matter, and maybe learning how to set some of those boundaries so that you can actually change your life in a positive way. So, let's just start with the basics, right? So, what are boundaries? Basically, boundaries are those invisible lines we draw to protect our time, right? Our energy, our mental state, our physical space, pretty much everything. They define where we end and someone else begins. Boundaries aren't about being mean or distant, they're about being clear. They let people know where you stand, right? They're not all walls to keep people out, they're gates to protect what's inside. So there's actually different kinds of boundaries. So you have emotional boundaries, right? Not taking responsibility for someone else's feelings, right? You have enough going on, and then adopting somebody else's feelings is just sucking energy that you don't have. You have your time boundaries saying no to protect your schedule, right? We all have schedules, we all have plans to do something, we have strategic things set in place, and then we take on somebody else's time, and now we're struggling to figure out how to maneuver the day. You have your physical boundaries, that needing that space, that rest. We all need that rest. You all need, I tell you how many times you need that time out. You have to recharge your battery. And then mental boundaries, not allowing those other people to belittle your thoughts or your beliefs. Think for a second, what area of your life feels the most quote unquote overrun? Where do you feel that exhaustion or pressure? That's often the place where a boundary is needed. It's pretty much a red flag. So let's break down why these are so important. They protect your mental health. Number one, without boundaries, we absorb everyone's problems, their stress, and demands of other people. That's literally the fast track to burnout. Boundaries can actually help build healthier relationships. It allows everybody to understand where you're at. People know what to expect from you when you give them your boundaries and you're not secretly building resentment for them. How about some self respect? Every time you say, no, I can't do that right now, or that doesn't work for me, you're reinforcing the belief that you actually matter, that your needs are also important, and they are. Everyone's needs are important. How about when you make these boundaries, you're really creating room for what matters? Every no that's something that drains you is a yes to something that fuels you. Boundaries can create that space for what actually matters. Rest. How about your purpose? Joy, connection. All right, question. Ask yourself, what am I saying yes to that I don't really want? And what is that costing me? Ask yourself that question. All right, now let's talk about a hard part. If boundaries are so helpful, why are they so hard? Probably a lot of people will think that it's the fear of disappointing people. I don't like disappointing people. I know a lot of my listeners do not as well. We're people pleasing, right? We don't want people angry at us, so we don't say no. That guilt is real. How about the fear of conflict? Nobody likes conflict, right? Sometimes we would rather say yes than deal with an argument or the pushback from the person you're trying to talk to. You know what I'm talking about. It's saying yes to something you didn't want to, and then going to someone else and saying, I shouldn't have said yes to this. I don't really want to do this, right? You might not even like that person that much to do what you're doing. But you said yes because conflict was winning that argument. When you say yes instead of no, it's putting down your self worth. You might believe that their needs matter more than yours, or that saying no is selfish. That's not true. It's actually the opposite. You saying no is actually selfless. It's actually protecting your self worth. Some of us are raised to always say yes. Maybe you grew up in a family where boundaries weren't respected, so now you struggle to set them. We need to change that mindset. But let me be clear, boundaries are not selfish. It's just a form of self-respect. People not always like your boundaries. That's a given. But healthy people will learn to respect them. You need to start setting boundaries because what you're doing is you're just wasting your energy. All right, so what does a boundary even sound like? How about this? I'm not available after 6 p.m. I need that time for myself and my family. Put your work phone down, shut off from that side of the world. Enjoy your time. How about another one? I'd really love to help you, but I'm really at capacity right now. I just can't really handle something else. See how clear is that? No drama, no explaining, just calm, firm, respectable communication. You don't owe everyone an explanation. Remember that. Say that again to yourself. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You can say no without a full paragraph. So if you've really been struggling with setting boundaries, start small. Start paying attention to yourself. Notice when you feel drained or resentful. That's a boundary issue. Start checking those little boxes. Write out your boundaries. Practice saying it out loud to yourself. Could be in the mirror. It doesn't make any difference. You're starting to rewire your brain to understand what your expectations are of yourself, right? It's the same thing with positive affirmations. You have to continuously say these out loud to yourself. Remember, you're your biggest listener. So if you're giving these boundaries to yourself, then they will actually be able to come out to other people, but you have to start small. It's not going to just come out right away. The real test in this is not actually setting the boundary, but sticking to it. We can say things all day long, but we have to stick to the plan. Of course, you're going to get pushback from people. You're going to try to get out of conflict, and it's going to happen one way or the other. But don't let them push you. Stick to your guns. Boundaries take practice. The first few times might feel terrifying. That's okay. Growth is uncomfortable, right? But it's growth. And it'll get easier, but you have to stick to the plan. I know a lot of people listening right now hear the word boundaries and maybe might tense up a little bit, might be a little uncomfortable. Most of us were not taught how to set boundaries. We were taught to be nice, say yes to everything, not to rock the boat. You don't want conflict. But here's the truth, setting boundaries does not mean it's necessary. In fact, it might be the boldest, healthiest thing you could ever do for your well being. You have to protect your energy. And just remember, you will get pushback from people. They'll probably guilt trip you. You've probably been doing this for a long time, so they just expect you to take on their issues, even when you don't have the mental capacity or physical capacity to do this. They might accuse you of being selfish. They might push your limits. Just remember this, you're not responsible for other people's reactions. You're responsible for honoring your needs, not theirs. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify things or fix their discomfort. That discomfort isn't your burden to carry. Drop that bag, please. Every time you hold on to your boundary, even when it's hard, you're teaching the world and yourself that your needs are valid. And you start practicing boundaries. Just practice one small one. Even if it's skipping a group text or saying not today. I'm always a big one of this, writing your stuff down, writing your boundaries out. Everyone loves visuals, right? Look at it. We're not trying to shut people out. We're trying to make space for what truly matters. When you set that boundary, you're protecting that energy, like I talked about, so you can give your best to the things that matter most. When you write that stuff down, you're reframing your thoughts. It's helping you think instead of I'm being selfish. It's reminding yourself I'm prioritizing my well being. Instead of you thinking they're going to be upset, it's going to allow you to think, hey, if they value me, they'll respect my boundaries. Think of setting boundaries like a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger you get at it. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out, they're about letting the right people in on your terms. Without these boundaries, you risk feeling resentful, overworked, and definitely overwhelmed. You might start saying yes to things that drain you just to keep the peace and avoid that conflict. But again, over time, this isn't sustainable. Setting those boundaries allows you to show up as your best self, present, grounded, and in control of your own life. We have to stop feeling guilty about trying to be our best self and protecting our energy to actually help others as the best us we can be. Boundaries matter because you matter. You have always mattered, but you've used that power that you have and put yourself aside to help other people, and that's fine. But sometimes you actually have to pay attention to yourself and your energy because with an empty cup, you can't help anybody. Remember, no is a complete sentence. Let that one sit there for a minute. You don't need to give an explanation on why you don't want to do things. It is absolutely necessary to be straightforward as possible with those in your life. If you don't like the way in which someone speaks to you when they're upset, it's very important to make that perfectly clear by communicating how it makes you feel. You have to let them know exactly what your emotions are at that time. If you leave it open for interpretation, you risk your boundaries being disrespected time and time again. The less clear you are, the more up for interpretation your boundaries are, the more likely you are to be disappointed in other people. They can't know what you don't tell them. So tell them. Healthy boundaries are a crucial part of all of our lives. It's a crucial part of our success, being happy, having strong relationships. Just because they're important doesn't mean that they're also easy to set. Remember that in order for boundaries to be respected, you have to make your boundaries clear to everyone. And remember, no matter what, you're worth it. This is what these boundaries are for. It's going to take some courage and strength to set these boundaries. But when you do so, you can feel comfortable knowing your lines have been set and people should know where those lines are. And unfortunately, somebody is going to choose to violate those boundaries. But that actually does give you the right to create further distance between yourself and that person. That's why those boundaries are in place. No one has the right to tread on your boundaries. But also keep in mind that you, likewise, don't have the right to tread on someone else's. And I know sometimes it's hard to communicate your boundaries. Someone always seems to break them. Just know that you're allowed to cut off contact with that person. Anyone who doesn't respect your boundaries ultimately doesn't respect you. You have to know your boundaries before you expect anyone else to follow them. The most important thing out of this is to remember that you are allowed to set these boundaries. And there's no need to feel guilty about it. There is going to be, again, pushback from people. But that means they're not respecting the boundaries that you have set. But they also have to know those boundaries. So it's on you also to tell them those boundaries. The world is not a better place when we ignore our needs for the comfort of others. The people who care about you want to know what you need to feel safe. But they can't help you until you know that yourself and are able and willing to communicate those needs with other people. We have to know your boundaries in order to protect them. We want to protect those boundaries to make you feel safe, to make you feel respected, and in control of your own life. I know it's hard to keep at your boundaries, especially again when you want to make sure that you are helping as many people as you can. But there is a line. We can only do so much for individuals without having those boundaries. Because instead of actually helping them, now we're getting taken advantage of. And now we're running on empty. And then what happens is it doesn't hurt them, it ends up hurting us because we run out of energy and then our body shuts down and then we actually end up hurting the ones around us. So these boundaries are so important to set and stay on them. We have to stay the course. So as I start wrapping up this episode for today, I hope that some of this resonates with you and allows you to start moving forward and start setting those boundaries. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have those needs. You are allowed to say no. And not only are you allowed, you are worthy of protecting your peace. That's what boundaries do. They start helping you say yes to your own life. Let's start taking care of you. So as I wrap up today's podcast today, I just want to thank every single one of you for listening to this episode today on boundaries and maybe other episodes that I've had. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. These are all for you. We are trying to remind you how important and how needed you are on every aspect. You are so worthy of being the best you that you can be. We're going to do this as many times as we have to make sure that you understand how important you are. All right, so as I leave you always, I leave you with this. Stay grounded, stay kind to yourself, and remember, strength begins with honesty. Until next time.